Welcome, my friends, to the Far Post podcast presented by Esports Gaming League. Yes, even though very few of you have asked, I shall note, this show does still exist. It's our first show since August
2018.
First show since August 2018. It has been a few years. Look, we haven't recorded for like a month and a half, and I think at some point the league is going to have to make a decision between whether they want the players to play games consistently or whether they want us to record the Far Post podcast, because at a certain point when the team is playing games every 3 or 4 days, it becomes a little too much. We have too much to do to be able to record podcasts consistently, and I think they're going to have to make a decision at some point because
the rubber's going to meet the road.
No?
Yeah, Jeff.
So luckily, we're here this week with an opportunity to record because the team was on a break.
Who knows when we'll get back.
But I have no clue when we're going to be able to record another show.
Nope.
It's like, I guess they want the teams to keep playing games and we can produce content from the games.
Seems selfish.
It really does.
Narrow-minded, actually.
It really does.
Yeah.
I'm going to provide the silver lining, though. At least the Revs went unbeaten. If we were going to not have a podcast, at least they didn't lose any games in that period. So
Fair.
That's true.
At least it was a good stretch.
But we could have been talking about all this great stuff. I mean, there have been plenty of years where the Revs lost every weekend and then we had a podcast to talk about
all the time. Yes.
Every week.
Yes.
It's like, what do we talk about this week?
Yep.
The Revs lost again.
Yep.
This year, we finally have wins every single weekend, and we don't have enough time to sit down and talk about it on a podcast because
Good problem
we
to
have
have.
other content that we have to produce and
Yep.
other jobs to do. It's absurd. Well, I'm still Jeff Lemieux, and I'm still hosting the show, which is a
Boo
poor
you,
decision on
sir.
whoever makes those types of decisions. I don't know who makes those decisions, but
Wow, they're
bad
happy.
decision.
They missed you.
Wow.
It's been too long.
Well, the thing is we were away so long they don't remember who I am. So
Yes.
they're just cheering because someone's hosting the
I
show.
will never forget who you are.
I appreciate
Deep
that.
down in your core.
We've got Conlon
Hello.
back for the first. You weren't even on our last 2 shows.
I've been on once in 2 years.
Do you know what when the last show was that you were on?
Oh, man.
Well, not exactly like.
No, I was in here, though.
July.
Was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was a while ago. It's now mid-October.
Wasn't
Holy
that
Lord.
also the first show you were on in 2?
Yes.
Both of you on in 2 years too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the pandemic, we did everything
Yeah.
remotely for a long time.
I think I was fired and then just showed up one day.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, God, he's here. Put him on the desk.
His badge still works.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
I guess we should let him on.
a little surprised that you're on right now. If you'll notice, we had to go downstairs to get an extra chair
Yes.
before we started the show.
This is
did.
awkward.
That should have been a hint to
Yeah.
you.
It's like Ben Simmons showing up at the Pistons practice yesterday. This is awkward. Yeah.
Is the Pistons?
76ers.
Sixers, I was going to say, did he get
76ers,
traded
yeah.
to the Pistons?
No,
I missed that?
76ers, yeah. He just showed up.
Nice.
No one was expecting him.
Nice.
They all figured he was going to hold out or not come back because he said he'd never play for them again. And then he just arrived.
Well, that's definitely what happened today. That's why we had to go down and
Yeah.
get the extra chair. We weren't
And here I
planning
am.
on having you here. Luckily,
Here I
we had
am.
the extra mic.
But now we can do this thing where we all look at each other.
Yeah, no.
Which is nice.
That's true.
Yeah.
We've got Elizabeth Pehota here, who just ran here, I think, from Chicago.
Yes,
Yes.
nonstop.
Ran the Chicago Marathon on Sunday and then just continued running. And then, for some reason, didn't take the elevator up to the studio.
That's
She took
true.
the stairs.
Stairs are my enemy right now. They are tough, but it's a lot harder going down than up, I will say.
Interesting.
But yes, I did run 26.2 miles over the weekend.
Good for you.
Thank you. Oh, guys, come on.
You will reach an age where you don't have to run a marathon for stairs to become your enemy.
True.
That's true.
They're just your enemy all the time.
Good point, Jeff.
Or you just get out of shape enough that you get to the top of the stairs
Yeah.
and you're out of breath and you have a few quiet moments of contemplation like, am I really out of breath from having walked up 2 flights of stairs?
Yep.
And the answer is always
The answer is
inevitably yes.
Yeah. Sadly, yes.
Indeed it is.
Well, I just want to say quickly, too, thank you to all of you guys and also to all the Revs fans that supported me in my training and following me along in the marathon. I received a lot of nice messages and tweets, you guys included. So thank you to everybody listening who followed along and has supported me in that journey.
It's a lot easier to do that than run the marathon.
Yeah.
And you didn't even raise money for this one because you were running it. It wasn't the Boston Marathon. So
Yeah.
I feel a lot better about myself when I can donate money. Then I feel like I'm part of the marathon. So next time, even if you're not fundraising, if you could just be like, hey, everybody give me $50 or something, and
Just
I'll feel better
Just get
about
paid
myself.
for it.
Just do a GoFundMe. Those things are all fake anyway. Just do one. People just give you money. Say you're like saving turtles or something.
Saving turtles.
People just give you all the money.
I couldn't get away with that, guys.
No one validates those things.
Elizabeth does have a problem where even when she makes a joke that's very obviously a joke, she then within 5 seconds needs to tell me that it was a joke just so she doesn't think that she was actually being. Or I don't think
like
she was being mean.
lying or being mean. To
Well, you know what?
people,
I'll do it for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll handle your business affairs. You just focus on your training.
Someone needs to pick up the slack for me, Call.
You just
Thank
focus
you.
on the training. You don't need to worry about how the sausage was made. Just be fine.
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Deal.
And on the soundboard, we've got Jason Dalrymple with us. How are you, Jason?
Yeah, I only have so many buttons, so we'll just get the sounds out of the way now.
I was going to say, we've got, because it's been so long, you've had a little bit of time to rack up some more sounds that we haven't been able to use on shows.
That's all I've been doing since our last recording. It's just pulling sounds together.
Yeah. Well, look, one or two things have happened since our last show, right? Because it has been about a month and a half or so. The Revs have not only clinched their spot in the Audi MLS Cup playoffs, they've also clinched first place in the Eastern Conference, a first-round bye in the Eastern Conference playoffs, and home field advantage through at least the conference final. Oh, and should also note they did all of that before anyone else in the league even clinched a playoff spot.
Absurd.
And it's funny. I feel like throughout the course of my time with the Revs, people all know that you work for the team, friends and family, neighbors, they all know you work for the team. So it's kind of a natural course of conversation when you see people. They ask, oh, how's the team doing? And I've been with the team for 14 seasons, and the answer has always been somewhat the same. I mean, depending on the season and depending the time of the season, you'll say, well, things are going pretty well right now. We're in the fight for a playoff spot, or we're in a little bit of a rough patch right now. We're looking to get things turned around. Like, those were basically the two answers. Like, there was very rarely an answer that was completely off of that path. So this year, as friends, family, neighbors have asked me throughout the course of the season, how are the Revs doing? I've had to kind of pause and gather myself. And as I have told them, one, the Revs are in first place in the entire league, but not only that, they're on pace to have the best regular season in MLS history. I almost feel weird telling people that because I feel like I'm bragging or lying, or I don't know. It feels weird.
We're just not used to it. That's all. We're just not used to it. Even when these teams were wagons back in the early part of, like, when I first started in 6 and 7, we went back to back MLS Cups. It wasn't this sort of dominance, so we're definitely not used to it. So there's that sort of, it's weird to talk about because you're not used to it. Then there's the sort of sense of impending doom that always hangs over us because we're Revs fans, and even like long-term season ticket holders in the front row of the fort. I mean, every time we win a game, they're kind of like this is awesome. Is everything okay? Like, what
do I do with my hands?
Exactly. So it's just we're just not used to it. Which is a fantastic problem to have.
Yeah, I almost get the sense, especially my neighbors who don't follow the team as much, but who I've always told as they've asked, how's the team doing? And I'll say, oh, we've won a couple of games in a row. Things are going well right now. We're struggling a little bit. We'll get things turned around. When I say now we're on pace to be the best team in MLS history, you feel like they're like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
all right,
cool.
Good for you.
See you later.
Yeah, good job.
It just doesn't feel like anybody
all right,
really
rooting for you. Yeah.
I will say I do always enjoy this time of year, especially when the Revs are in the postseason, and this year, especially as they're in first place in the Eastern Conference and are pushing towards a potential supporter shield and all these things that we've never even talked about before. This is a time of year where, like, you can wear Revs gear. You'll go to the grocery store. You get more people making little comments here and there, like, "Oh, hey, you going to the game this weekend? Oh, hey, I've been following the team." And you're like, it's just nice when you're standing in line at the grocery store and you're wearing Revs gear, and everybody feels like they gotta make a comment because the Revs are the best team in Boston at the moment. Well, I guess the Red Sox are in the ALCS, but whatever. The Revs are the best team in Boston.
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, for sure. Ollie had a soccer tournament this week. Get down on the Cape, down there, Jeff. I drove by your hometown.
Did you wave?
I did.
Nice.
But obviously, it's a soccer friendly crowd. But you could tell all the Revs fans were all acknowledging each other. They're all like,
yeah.
Pretty good, right? Pretty good.
Little nods here and there.
Good.
Like, yeah.
Like when Jeep drivers pass each other on the road and they always give each other the Revs fans are now kind of like, a little bit of a peacock. I'm like, yeah, look at us. How we doing?
I will say I went to a fundraising event for the LA Fund. It was a breast cancer fundraiser, and they had a lot of Boston female, I guess you could say local, like, celebrities or whatever, but they kind of were going through just like saying all the people that were there and had helped with the event. And it came to me and they said the New England Revolution. And I had just never had experienced this. The woman was like, let's give it up for the New England Revolution, #1 right now. And I was floored because it was like in front of a ton of people. And it was a really, really nice gesture. And there's other people at other sports teams that were there that were like, part of the local celebrities. And they took a minute to honor the Revs. And I was like, Wow, this feels great. People are noticing us. People are talking and celebrating.
This town loves a winner.
Yeah, I say this is New England, and we have always talked about this throughout the years. You say, well, how do you kind of break through? How do you break through?
Win.
Well, there's several different answers, I'm sure, but number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're all win.
Win.
Wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just win.
People will follow you if you win.
Yeah, for sure.
So hyped.
That's where if you go back to the ultimate frustration in the history of this club is losing the 2002 MLS Cup in front of 62,000 people here. Like if I can't quantify what the difference is if you win that game, but you had 60,000+ people here to see a championship game for a team they were ready to get behind, and you lost. And it's hard to say, oh, it didn't really make that, or what the difference could be. But yeah, if you win, man, this team will jump on the bandwagon, right? Like at the Red Sox now. They had, we're all jumping on that. We weren't there all year, admittedly, but we love a winner.
We do.
We got to win now, though.
It's true. You put yourself in this position to now have some more people jump on the bandwagon moving forward into the next season. And it feels like there have been, we've talked about this before, Cathal. There's been a lot of games in the history of this club where things were kind of building to a crescendo, and then you get a massive crowd at Gillette. And the game I think of is 2018. We had, 40,000 in the building for the LA Galaxy game.
Yep.
That was a
And
tough
you're up
one.
1-0 late,
Yep.
and you're up a man, and then you concede 2 late goals and lose 2-1. And it's just like these opportunities where you're like, tonight's the night. We can capture a lot of these people tonight.
Yes.
And then you just absolutely lay an egg.
Yes.
It's happened so many times.
We have a history of massive egg laying in the biggest moments. And look, we have another one in front of us Saturday night, right? There's going to be a great crowd in the building. You have a wagon of a team in a game you should win, right? In the years of old, I would put money on us losing this game.
Yeah, you get the shoulders scrunched up.
This is the perfect game we lose. That's where this team feels a little different, All
right, well, kind of along those lines, like after the Revolution's last win over CF Montreal, a convincing 4-1
Club
win.
de foot.
I will mention.
De foot.
Bruce Arena was on 98.5 The Sports Hub with Zoe and Bertrand, and he was asked, since that was the Revs' 20th win of the season, first time in club history that ever reached 20 wins, could he believe that the club was 24-5 through 29 games? And Bruce said, no. He said, I did not expect this team to have 20 wins at this point, but credit to the guys. They're doing pretty well. Understated as ever.
Classic
Credit
Bruce
to the guys.
delivery,
They're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't get the sense that he's holding back there. I don't think he's just trying to make sure the guys don't get too far ahead of themselves. I think Bruce Arena legitimately believes that, no, he did not expect this team to have 20 wins right now, because none of us expected this team to have 20 wins right now. And Elizabeth, I know we talked about this on the last show a little bit, but Cathal, you weren't here, so I wanted to get your take on it as well. What were your actual expectations for the New England Revolution at the beginning of this season? Because I'm assuming that they fell something short of best team in MLS history.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming they were also higher than they'd been for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think, coming off, you looked how last season ended, and you looked how good this team looked once Carlos was back in the lineup, and when you saw sort of some of the moves in the postseason, more players returning, and the nucleus and the third year of Bruce Arena, I had high hopes that we were going to be a contender, a legitimate team people would have to deal with to win the Eastern Conference. You were going to have a say in what happened there, and then who knows? From there, can you put a run together and get to MLS Cup? So that was sort of the expectation. I expected us to be competitive. I expected us to be one of those teams at the end of the day that was in the hunt, but not this. I mean, I don't know what. I still don't really know what to do with this. To be with a handful of games left, to be within touching distance of being the greatest regular season team of all time is absurd, right? So I still don't quite know what to do with it. But that's where that's where we are now. That's what the expectation is, right? And that's why you bring in a Bruce Arena to let him build a program to get to this point. But yeah, 20 wins is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But here we are.
I mean, I was actually shocked to see. I went back yesterday and looked at the Revs' finish last year. Now, I knew that the Revs had obviously, the club had kind of slipped right at the end of the regular season there, slipped into the play-in round of the playoffs. But in a 26-team league last year, you know where the Revs finished in the overall table at the end of the regular season? 15th. 15th in a 26-team league last year. And again, there were a lot of circumstances. Carlos Heel missed most of the season last year. So as Carlos Heel got back into this group and we saw what this team did through the playoffs, made that run to the Eastern Conference Final, yes, coming into this season, certainly expected the Revs to be able to challenge for a top 3 place in the Eastern Conference, expected that they were a team that, if there were 5, 6, 7 teams you were talking about as teams who had a real shot to win a championship, the Revs were in that mix for me.
Yeah.
But after finishing 15th in the league table last year, did I think they were going to be the best team in MLS history this year, potentially? You'd have been insane to think that.
You couldn't have. And you look at and your best case, and you talk about all those, and if Tejan continues his development we saw in the playoffs, and if Carlos stays
stuff
healthy,
had to come together.
right, and if Gustavo is consistent, and if Adam Buxa starts putting the ball in the net, and if Matt Turner continues, and you have all these ifs, and you're like, okay, if they can eradicate all of the nonsense that cost them results last year, then you got a chance. But there's so much of piled on top of the if pile there. You're like, you needed a lot of stuff to come together, but you thought if it could, there's enough talent there, and again, the coaching is right, and if it all comes together, then watch out. But for it all to come together into this is still sort of surreal. It's a little weird.
But here's the thing, though. You mentioned all these if calls from last year. Like, if all this comes together, Carlos is healthy, Tajon develops, Matt Turner continues, etc. You look at this year, and despite all of those ifs, they have continued, but people have been missing. They've been injured. International calls. We've called on our depth. Despite any sort of challenge or setback that this group has had, they've continued the form and continued to bounce back. And I think, to me, that's the most impressive part of this entire season is whenever they've been missing pieces or have had some sort of adversity, they've just dealt with it, and they've honestly thrived in it. It's been insane to even watch Carlos Heel be out an entire month and for the team to still be so successful, because having that sort of momentum and confidence going into the postseason at this point, I think that's going to be a dangerous tool that they're going to have.
Which is where it comes back to the value of a Bruce Arena.
Yeah.
And the value of building a squad and a roster as he has done over the past couple of years. And he's added pieces like Matt Polster and Tommy McNamara and people like that. And he's just built this thing. And on top of it, all the players all believe and they're all bought in. So to them, it's, okay, Carlos isn't playing. That's all right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They're all in rowing in the same direction. That's because of what Bruce presents. And this is the plan. And regardless of who the 11 players are, we don't believe in formations and tactics and strategies and that stuff. But that's, again, it comes back to having the experience driving the ship and that you have with Bruce Arena, that the players don't have to panic.
It's true.
Yeah, and there have certainly been performances this year where the Revs have absolutely played teams off the park and have deserved the 3 points from start to finish. And there are always going to be performances throughout the course of a season where maybe you don't play at your best and you still come out with 3 points. But the Revs have been masters of that this season, where the number of times we've finished up a game, and I look back at the 90-minute performance and say, I don't know if they deserved 3 points today, but came out with, that has happened so many times this year.
We've said this for years. When you look at the good teams in every sport and in every league, the good teams find a way to win. They just do. It may not always look great, but they find a way to win. And that's really important. I've heard Alex Cora say it 5 times in the past week that, we don't always look really good. But when we do look good, we're good. Right? And there's this thing about, God, we watched Tom Brady do it here for 2 decades. He would pull out games that they shouldn't really have won. They didn't deserve to win. But at the end of the day, it's a win, and you move on. And this team is never beaten, and it doesn't matter how they're playing or what's happened in the game or the circumstance in the game. It doesn't matter. Just get on with it, and they'll find a way to win. That's as important a tool to have as being able to go and beat people 4-5 nothing or 4-5-1. If you can grind, especially in this MLS postseason, if you can grind and dig out wins when you're not at your best, that's, like you said, watch out, man.
Yeah.
Well, we've mentioned the Revs have already locked up first in the East, locked it up with still 5 games left in the regular season. That's what they had stated as their number one goal for weeks. Every interview we'd done with players or Bruce Arena for weeks, they weren't mentioning Supporters Shield. They were mentioning first place in the Eastern Conference. We want to lock up first in the East. We want home field advantage throughout the conference final. But there's still a lot on the table through these last 5 games. There are some of the obvious things like Supporters Shield, still on the table. That would be a trophy, of course, and home field advantage, guaranteed home field advantage in a potential MLS Cup. There are a lot of MLS records that are on the table. The all-time points record on the table. The Revs, with 2 wins and 2 draws in their last five games, would actually surpass the previous point total of 72 set by LAFC in 2019. The regular season wins record is on the table. Technically, the record is 24, but that's a bit of a misnomer because that includes shootout victories, which were actually draws. So the real record is 22.
Hashtag MLS.
The real record is 22, which the Revs are 2 shy of with 5 games to go. There's every reason to believe the Revs could end up with that record. So those are on the table. Then you talk about, okay, you've got 5 games left in the season, and in those games, there are some things you want to improve upon. You want to make sure that you're getting yourself as sharp as possible heading into the playoffs. You've also got the consideration of making sure that you're as healthy as possible heading into the playoffs. That becomes a consideration. So when you think about all of these things, what for you should be that kind of number one objective with 5 games left in the season? What should the Revs be prioritizing with 5 games left in the season?
All of it.
What a cop-out.
No, it's not. Look, because one goal will accomplish the next, right? So let's take it one game at a time, right? To use a fantastic cliche. This Saturday, they have to come back after a long layaway, right? So this Saturday, it needs to get back to playing again and getting sharp again and being good again and getting back to know each other again, right? So that's a home game against Chicago, which should be a good chance for you to go win that game, right? You're going to have rotation built in for the Wednesday night games coming up, which gets back to the squad depth, right? So
probably going to make 9 changes again.
Right, which you're doing anyway, right, regardless of what else is on the table. So you're going to go and get what you can in DC, right, which has never been, that's always a challenging place for Revs to go, always has been.
I think they've only lost 1 home game this year, too. They've been really good at home.
Yeah, they're a good team there. And then you move on to the next game, right? And then you're sort of rotating again because it's coming fast. And then you have another Wednesday. So before you know it, you'd have 4 games where you're picking a team out of circumstance. And the motivation there is we need to keep people fresh and we can't overextend people. So we're trying to keep people healthy. So that's your concern. But in the meantime, if you're picking up points and winning games, you're accomplishing the other goals anyway. So I always worry about we need to start protecting the team too soon for a postseason because you risk putting everything, at stake that you've sort of built. And the way the playoffs are going to line up, it's a funky schedule anyway. So you got some off time built in after the last game of the season. So it's easy for me to say sitting here, but for me, it's do what you've been doing and keep going. And it's working. Don't change it. And what's meant to be will come your way. And that means go for it all.
My take is I agree with Cathal, but I think if I were to pick one objective at this point, it would be to win the last 3 home games. I think if you win the last, and I'm not saying to drop any other points on the road, but with 3 home games left, that's 9 points left on the table. You're going to beat the all-time MLS point record. You get 23 wins, beating all the all-time win in regulation record. I think if you can really put everything out there, especially for those 3 games, and also build Foxborough to be an even harder place to play ahead of the postseason, I feel like that puts them in a really good position. Again, I still think they should try to get points on the road and all of that, but I think if they can win the last 3 home games, I think they're in a really great position.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that even with 6 home games left.
Yeah.
So look, they got 6 home games left. There's 18 points on the table in Foxborough, and at that point, pretty much knew if they pick up 18 points in those 6 games, they're going to win the Shield.
Yep.
And they're still at a point now where, look, Seattle are 8 points back with a game in hand. Technically, you could go 3-2, and still, if Seattle win out, you could still remarkably lose the Shield. But you're probably going to win the Shield if you take 9 points from those last 5 games. But yeah, Call, to your point, I don't think that idea of we have to get the team physically ready for the playoffs and rest them is kind of out the window because there's every chance you're going to go 3.5 weeks between the regular season finale and the playoffs. There's the consideration of, you don't want to push guys 4 games in 12 days and go, we need to take 12 points from this 4-game stretch. We're going to press guys through no matter whether they're tired, because then you're risking hurting guys, which you don't want to do ahead of the playoffs. But you wouldn't really do that regardless of the
And I guess that was my point, right? And we haven't done that to this point anyway. Bruce has not been shy to rotate heavily for midweek games and keep the load off players. So I just don't think anything changes. Yeah. And I've obviously not spoken to Bruce Arena about this, but I find it hard to believe that he does not personally want to take that Bob Bradley record and put it on his own mantle.
Well, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course. He may say all the right things, and we will certainly make all the right noises in public, but
Well,
I've no
not
doubt.
exactly like that.
Sorry. I find it hard to believe that every record isn't written on a wall somewhere and we're striking them off with a Sharpie as we go.
I think as you look at, if you were offering me one or the other, an MLS Cup trophy or a Supporter Shield trophy,
why would anyone offer you that?
Yeah, it's MLS Cup because that's what the league.
Yes,
that's what the league considers the championship. It's not necessarily because that's harder to achieve or it means more. Anything. It's the league considers MLS Cup the championship.
Yes.
That's what no one looks at last season and says, well, the Philadelphia Union were the real champions. No, the Columbus Crew won the championship last year.
Correct.
That's the way the league works.
Correct.
With that said, right now, look, go out and win the friggin' Shield.
Sure.
It's right there in front of you, and the playoffs are such a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in the playoffs. You think about a game like the Reds had at home against Columbus a few weeks ago, right? That can happen in the playoffs. You can go out. It doesn't matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter who you've got on the field. It doesn't matter how well you play over the course of 90 or 120 minutes. This is a sport where the team who performs better, quote unquote, over the course of the day doesn't always win. There's just too many variables in a one-game elimination scenario. You've got the Shield in front of you right now. You go out and perform for 5 games, and you can win a Shield.
Yeah.
Go out and get it done, and then obviously you head into the playoffs full steam ahead. But that's such a whole separate thing. It's such a crapshoot. Get the Shield, get a trophy, and then go do what you can in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the Supporter Shield isn't important or the Supporter Shield isn't a great trophy to win. It absolutely is. It clearly is. But it's also clearly second. It's second to MLS Cup. That's the ultimate goal. That's what this club needs to get. That's the monkey we need to get off our back, right? That is what we need to achieve.
Especially in a year like this as well. And it's a point that Bruce Arena has made. And it doesn't take any shine off having that Supporter Shield in your trophy cabinet. But there's very little interconference play this year. So yes, is the Supporter Shield a true indication of who's the best team? Like, I don't know, because everybody's not playing everybody. Doesn't mean that a Supporter Shield isn't a great trophy that you put in your trophy cabinet. No. But I guess especially this year more so than others. Yeah, I mean, MLS Cup that's what people define as a championship.
Yes.
But I still want to go out and win that freaking sport.
Sure.
Yeah.
One's a means to an end.
Yeah. Well, and because if you win the Supporter Shield and you make it MLS Cup, you're hosting. So
yeah, sure.
December 11 in Foxborough would be nice.
It would be nice. Yeah. It would be crisp. Although today's mid-October, it's like 75 degrees.
Yeah,
out.
who knows? Who knows?
Can we predict the weather? I just don't think we can anymore.
It could be 75 or it could be snowing. Neither one would surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran a marathon in 82 degrees in October.
Yep.
Which
Nope. I would not be doing that. If it was 82 in my car and I was driving, I would be uncomfortable. Never mind running in it.
I would love, obviously, the single season points record. That's a great feather in your cap and all that. But when you think about that 2019 LAFC team, and you think of, okay, that was the best regular season MLS history.
Yeah, that choked.
The first thing you think about is, and they got knocked out in the first. They were the best team, and they choked in the first round of the playoffs.
They choked.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, you can get that record, lose in the first round, and that's how people are going to remember you.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right or wrong. That's
Same
just
thing
the
with
way
the Philadelphia Union last year. I mean, we remember it much better than Philadelphia fans because we knocked them out. But, they also won the Shield last year, and they didn't make it very far. Yeah.
Well, to that point, like this team already has a bunch of club records. And we talked about the MLS records that are on the table. They already have a ton of club records. 20 wins on the season, which has already surpassed the previous record of 17. So they've already far surpassed that, and they're probably going to continue to add to that. The points record was 57. They've already got 65 this year. The goals record was 55. They've already got 57 this year. So my question is, with 5 games left in the regular season, is this already going to go down as the best season/best team in Revolution history? If not, what do they need to accomplish from here to put themselves in that position?
They have to win the Eastern Conference Championship. End of story.
If they lost in the Eastern Conference Final after, say they win the Shield, they set the single season points record, but lose in the Eastern Conference Final, to you, because they've won Eastern Conference Finals in the past, this would not be the best season in Revolution.
I mean, the Shield provides some level of debate there, right? Because you've won the Supporter Shield.
It is a trophy.
It's a trophy, and it's some level of we'll add an extra level of debate into it. But to me, in my opinion, you can't be the best team in club history until you are on the stage to try and win MLS Cup. That's just how I feel about it. I look at those teams from 2002, 4, 5, 6, 7, all those teams were trying to get to MLS Cups, and man, to go through that whole MLS postseason, now it's a little bit easier and more condensed now than it was in some of those earlier years where it was home and away legs every round of the playoffs. They went on forever, and there was a lot of attrition there. But it's not easy to get to MLS Cup, and it's not easy to win an Eastern Conference Championship. And we saw it last year with this team, right? That went on a run in the playoffs and didn't come up a little bit short. So yeah, I think look, the Shield. I could be convinced that the Shield makes them a better team, but to me, you got to be on the field on December 11th to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I would argue. I think for me, you can't get knocked down the first round of the playoffs and be the best team in Revolution history.
Definitely.
I do think if you go to the Eastern, if you win the Shield, you set the single season points record. You win that first playoff game and you lose in the Eastern Conference Final. I think.
But if you lose at home to Orlando, let's say in Eastern Conference Final, can you be the best team in club history?
When you look back with a Shield and the single season points record and all that, like I think you'd still be the best team in club history.
But
Look, 2007 is the one that's the best season in club history for me right now because you won a U.S. Open Cup, you won a trophy, and you won the Eastern Conference Championship and got to the MLS Cup Final. So I guess you kind of look at it as, okay, well, you're kind of matching up the Open Cup and the Shield. For me, the Shield holds more weight than an Open Cup title.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then you're talking about the difference between losing an Eastern Conference Final or losing an MLS Cup. Like to me, that Shield puts you in the stratosphere of best team.
But I don't think we can evaluate it until after we see what Eastern Conference Final looks like.
I guess if you lose 4-0 at home or something,
yeah, who knows, right? Like if you're overwhelmingly the best team in the league and then you lose at home on your own turf to an Eastern Conference team, I just don't know how you can say that's the best team in club history. I would struggle with that.
Yeah, I guess I just don't know if I would end up at the end of a season, this type of season, putting that much weight on the one game. But it is the way most people look at it.
That's how right. That's how we define champions.
That's how you define a champion. But does it define how you define the best team in club history?
Yes.
For me, yes. Yeah, for sure.
I agree. And also, I know you guys are longtime Revs fans. I'm a little bit newer to the bandwagon. But for me, I think it's only the best team in MLS, in Revolution history, if they win the Cup. I think at this point, there's so much riding on it.
But they've never won a cup.
No,
so what if they lose in the final? If they lose in the final, it's still got to be the best team in MLS in Revs history.
I don't know.
Which team would be?
I mean, maybe the 2007. Like I said, I wasn't a Revolution fan then. But I think if you're going to call this team the best team in Revolution history, I feel like they need to win it. And like this is the time.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's going to be. I think you're at a point now where no question, if you don't win MLS Cup, it's a disappointing season.
That's sort of what I come back to, right? Can I look back, when you look back in the annals of history of the club and say, which was the best team ever? Can we look back on this team and say, it's always going to be tinged with disappointment if we don't win the MLS Cup. MLS Cup. If we don't win MLS Cup, it's always going to be regret. Because you're going to say, man, that team, 20-something wins. They were a freaking wagon. They had the MVP in their team. They had the best goalkeeper in the country. They had everything, and they freaking lost at home.
That is how people are going to remember it. That's what happens.
Yeah, and just to put that team as the best in club history is going to be a struggle for me.
I just also feel like, given the fact that we mostly played Eastern Conference teams this year, there wasn't the intra-country travel really going across the, I want to say across the globe, across the country.
No, it's halfway across it.
Yeah, halfway across it. I feel like you need to have that big Western win. And that's something that we just haven't seen from this group this year. I know Colorado's still on the docket to come here, and that's going to be a tough test because they're one of the top teams in the West. But I feel like you can't say this is the best team in club history until they're winning those types of games.
Yeah, no, the debate we'll be having in 2 months when they do win MLS Cup is this the greatest MLS team of all time? And we will say, yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm hands down with you on that. Like I think if they win all these records, they win MLS Cup. Hell yeah, they are. Can I say that?
It's the greatest MLS team of all time.
No, very much on the table with potentially. I mean, in theory, 8 games left. If you go through the final 5 games of the regular season and you play 3 games in the playoffs and you win a cup, you're 8 games away from being at that point pretty much unequivocally the best team in MLS history, because all of the teams who've had, I think, the 2-3 top points records have all not won MLS Cup. So to have that record and win MLS Cup, I don't even think there's a debate at that point. But I think if the Revs lose an MLS Cup, I think there's a debate about who's the best team in Revolution history. I still think this would be the best team in Revolution history, even if you lose in a Cup final.
Well,
I understand your point. It would depend how the game goes.
Yeah.
I hope we don't have to talk about that.
Let's hope we don't have the discussion.
Conversation.
Yeah, I know. It's a good one, but man, like this is not. It's not going to line up like this again.
No.
It's just everything
too much fell into place.
Yeah, and that's not to disparage the team. Yeah. They've done absolutely everything they had to do, and they've beaten everybody they had to beat, and they're a freaking wagon.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be in this spot again, and that's the way. And I know they're looking at it that way, and they're not. I know that's how we should be looking at it. Is there's like the DVDs, right? There's 8 games to glory, whatever it is. Like this is now. Like this could be this is the verge of history, right? And if we can get this done, and then we can win all those trophies, and we can all quit the day after MLS Cup and go walk off into the
Give
sunset.
me my ring.
And just leave, walk off into the sunset.
You guys made me nervous though with the putting into perspective how LAFC and the Philadelphia Union, the two most recent Supporter Shield winners, had their first round bye and then didn't make it past round one. So you just don't
it's
know.
A thing. It's a thing.
It's just the nature of
you just don't know.
Playoffs in all sports. I mean, look, that's what makes playoffs awesome, right? But it's also what makes them, when people analyze playoffs and go, well, how much are the playoffs really telling you who's the best team? Well, they're telling you who was the best team at that stage of the season, but that's what it just makes it fun.
Yeah,
it's like the Red Sox right now.
Yeah, and you heard from all people that want to disparage the Red Sox, a 1-game play-in baseball is ridiculous. Never mind, it's wildly entertaining that one game playoff game, but it's a 162 game season. How much weight can you put in one game? It's but that's all part of the process, and there's pressure, and there's a different level of playoff atmosphere is different than game 34 of the Premier League season. It's just different. There's different. It's a different set of stuff to deal with, and if you get through that, that's telling. That says something.
Well, I'll say this in 2014 when we lost MLS Cup to the LA Galaxy, and I got back to my apartment. And I
wept uncontrollably.
I very vividly remember having a thought. As soon as I walked back into my apartment, I thought, we just went through this absolute 10-month grind of a season, had this unbelievable second half, this magical playoff run, just to get to that point to have an opportunity. And now the season's over. We didn't get to lift the trophy. And now we've got to go through all of that again just to maybe have the chance to get back to a championship game. And I remember in that moment, there's that wave of devastation of we got to do that again just to get back. And as devastating as that feeling is, oddly enough, it's kind of what makes it beautiful, right? Is what you have to go through just to get that opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, look, it's well known that I'm a recovering soccer snob, right? And it's it's well known that do I believe that our championship should be decided by points? Yeah, probably somewhere deep in my soul. But this is America, and America has playoffs, and playoffs are freaking awesome.
They are.
They are awesome, and they're a grind, and they're hard, and it's tough, and whoever wins at the end of the playoffs deserves to be the champion. End of story. And that's it.
And that's why, too, if you are able to do what is on the table, it's right in front of the Revs right now, to be the best team in the regular season and then go out and get it done in the playoffs, it makes it
incredible,
extra special.
Yeah, and they've positioned themselves now to make the playoffs as relatively easy as possible for themselves. They've put the grind in to get to the point where you're not going to have to leave home, and hopefully you won't have to leave home for the whole thing. It's all there. It's all lined up. Now just keep doing what you've been doing and go get it all done.
It's almost unfortunate that there's only a double on the table with a Supporter Shield and an MLS Cup, because when I think about Open Cup, and there was no Open Cup this year as there was no Open Cup
this
last
second
year.
team would have
But
rolled that tournament.
You look at the depth on this team. How would this team have fared in an Open Cup this year?
Rolled it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just look at that Open Cup. I'm like, this would have been a year for this team to absolutely roll through that competition.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that second team is just loaded with talent and experience and people that have been there and done that. And that would be all right, where are we going this week? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go.
I think if the Revs do win the double, they win the Shield and win MLS Cup, I think we can call it a treble, because they probably would have won the Open Cup too, right?
Probably. I think that's right.
I think we can.
Logic.
Yeah.
It's fair. Yeah, I think it's probably only fair in that situation to call it a treble if that would happen.
I'll co-sign on that.
All right. Well, one of the other objectives that we talked about, I want to talk about some of the individual players and individual awards and all that shortly, but last conversation on kind of like team in general. We've talked about one of the objectives for these final 5 games being to sharpen things up, to tighten things up, to get a little bit better and improve on some of the recent performances before the playoffs start. As you look at 5 games to improve, what is the biggest area you want to see improve when you think about some of the recent performances before the playoffs start?
Can I give you 2?
Sure.
I mean, finishing.
Okay.
I want to
scored 9 goals in the last 3 games.
Yeah, but I also feel like we've left about 27 goals on the table.
Fair.
And when you get to playoffs, you're not going to be scoring 3-4 goals a game. You got to take all your chances. You got to take them all, every single one of them. So I want us to
gives you a sense of where the Revs are because they literally have the best attack in the league. They have the most goals in the league, most goals in club history, and you still want the finishing.
And I
to get
still
better.
want them to finish better because we create so many chances. And when you get to the defending's going to get better in the postseason, everything's going to get tighter. You're not going to get all those chances. You have to take every chance you're given. So I want to see us take every single chance we're given. And at the other end, we've given up some I almost swore, we've given up some soft goals in the last handful of games. And that Matt Turner has held his hand up and said, I haven't been playing great. Defensively, we haven't been great. That's, again, on the other side of my you have to finish your chances argument. If you give up easy chances, that's a recipe for disaster in the postseason. Those two go hand in hand. But yeah, we've been a little bit lax. We've given up a few soft goals.
I feel like it's a very Stevie Nicol answer. What do you want to improve? I want to score more goals and I want to concede less.
Yeah, I know. I understand how rudimentary that sounds. But when I watch the games, and that's what I get frustrated with. I get frustrated when we play all this great football, we create all these great chances, and there's a couple of games where you're like, oh, for God, just put the ball in the net.
Yeah.
And you'll get nights where we had the Columbus game at home, right? That's what scares me.
Yeah.
Is a night like that shows up, right? So, and on the other end, we've just given up some really soft goals.
You got anything, Elizabeth?
For me, it's the defensive performances. We've conceded 5 goals in the last 3 games. I know we scored 9, so we've obviously been able to take 9 points in those games. But for me, I think I want to see things tightened up. I know Matt Turner did say candidly post game recently that he hasn't been playing his best, and I'd like to see him. I mean, we know he can make the big saves, but I would love to see that come a little bit more to fruition in the postseason. And also clean sheets in general at home. We've only kept one clean sheet. Was it 1-0? 1-0 win. I think that was the FC Cincinnati game. Is the most recent one at home. So I'd love to see
FC Cincinnati at home beat 4-1, conceded against FC Cincinnati.
No, back in May.
That was in Cincinnati.
Oh, that was in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I just feel like we haven't kept enough clean sheets just in general as a whole. So I'd like to see a lot more of that. And I think we've done more on the road. Like I think the most recent one was the 1-0 win at Philadelphia where we were down a man. But
that's the only clean sheet in the last 11 games.
It's crazy.
Anywhere.
It's
one clean sheet in the last 11.
Yeah, I think they really need to step that up because I think last year that's what got us so far was our defensive performances. We weren't able to finish our chances, but we were able to keep it out of the net. And I feel like if we can play as a defensive first team heading into the postseason, I think we have a much higher chance of going all the way.
I think the defensive resolve, I mean, that's number one. It's clear.
Yeah.
That's what all of the players are saying as well.
Yep.
What do you want to improve upon? We got to get a little bit tighter defensively. There have been some of the goals that the Revs have conceded have been bad goals.
Soft.
And then, I think of that Chicago game. Oh. That was a Chicago team that had scored 1 goal in their previous 5, and they probably should have scored 5 or 6 in that game. They should have
scored a boatload in that game,
So you're going to have to tighten things up defensively before you get into the playoffs. And also, in terms of some of the starts at home recently, the results have been good. The starts have been a little slow. We're conceded first in 3 of the last 5 home games. Now they've come back and won 2 and drawn one of those games, so they've been able to recover. But come playoff time, you don't want to be conceding first at home.
Nope. Trouble.
And then, Cathal, to your earlier point, I know one of the points that I'm sure people will bring up heading into the playoffs as well. We want them to put teams away, have more wins like that 4-1 win over Montreal. Because 16 of the 20 wins this season have been 1-goal wins.
Bruce's favorite, the 1-goal win.
And there's 2 sides of that, right? There's the side of it that the point you make that, well, if you're able to win 16 games by a single goal, which is an MLS record for a season, those are the types of games you're going to play in come playoff time. And the Reds have shown a propensity to win those types of games over and over and over again.
Yep.
Now, of course, the flip side of that is, sure, come playoff time, if you're going to be in closer games, then you're leaving a little bit more to chance. You're letting teams hang around like they did with Columbus and like they've done a few times. And you don't want to do that if you don't have to. But I think it's more important that they've shown the ability to win those types of games
no doubt.
than the fact that they haven't put teams away.
Yeah, and look, it's nitpicky, right? Again, we've spent the first however long of the show talking about how incredible the season was.
About 45 minutes, not too bad.
44 minutes and count.
How incredible the season has been so far and how great this team has been. So it's a little nitpicky to say, here are the things that worry me. But yeah, when you look at some of the teams you might run into, we can't make some of those mistakes that we got away with. It's just different. It's different come playoff time. It's a different atmosphere, different tension, different pressure, but that all goes back to who's leading this team.
Yep.
And he's been there and done that, and this team will be prepared for every situation.
For the 16 1-0 wins, part of me also takes into consideration, and not to make it a caveat, but this team has had so many changes with international call-ups, with Carlos Heel's injury that kept him out for a month. So part of me has to wonder, is it due to the rotation and some of the call-ups that we've got in those the 1-goal wins? I don't know. But showing the ability that we have the chance to grind it out even with them, I think, like you were saying, Jeff, I feel like that's very hopeful come the postseason.
The funny thing is, too, there are at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of those wins that, like, the Revs were up 3-1 late and conceded a goal, and it ends up being a 1-goal win, and it goes into the category of a 1-goal win. But, like, you were up 3-1 late, and then you kind of let them back into it, which is another thing you don't want to do. But it's like they go into the book as 1-goal wins when you're like, well, yeah, I guess that was a 1-goal win, but they were in control basically the entire game until stoppage time. Right. All right, well, let's move on, like I said we would, to some of the individual conversations here, because with less than a month left in the regular season, MVP is a big conversation. The Landon Donovan MLS
It's not
MVP.
a big conversation.
I'm saying, but it's something that obviously comes up at this point in the season, and maybe there's only one name on everybody's lips, but
there should only be.
But it's going to be something that people talk about.
Well, not exactly like that.
So I guess I'll just pose the question: why is Carlos Heel the 2021 Major League Soccer MVP?
Trust your eyes. Just watch the games and trust your eyes. End of story. You can take everything else and throw it out the window and just watch the games and watch the player. He does something in every game that makes me get out of my seat. And not because it's something I don't see in MLS. It's because it's something I don't see in football. He just does something in every game that's incredible. He is head and shoulders the best player in this league right now. It's not even close. And if you're trying to make arguments about goals and total goals and all that other stuff, you can find numbers and build arguments for yourself all you want, but just watch. Just trust your eyes and watch the games and watch the player. Hands down, it is simple. It's case closed. It's over. He's the best player in the league.
Everything is faster and more accurate than,
he's just brilliant.
Than anybody.
He's just an excellent player. Everything he does is exceptional.
Yeah.
Even when he first came to the team, you just watched him out of training. You're like, he is head and shoulders better than anyone I've ever seen out here.
He's phenomenal.
And we've had some great players come through here.
And we don't, I send an outline before the show to let you know like what questions we're going to ask, but I don't let you know what I've jotted down. And that's literally what I wrote down. I test. And people don't want to do that anymore. People, as we move into the age of analytics, it's almost like this taboo to be like, well, you got to trust your eyes occasionally. So, well, I don't want to, but the numbers.
Just watch the player.
You can absolutely make a numbers-based case for Carlos Heel to be the league MVP this year. The runaway leader in terms of assists. What's more important for me is runaway leader in terms of chances created. Because assists relies on other people to finish the chances. Carlos Heel, no one in this league has created more dangerous scoring opportunities than Carlos Heel, and it is not particularly close. But beyond all of that, it does just come down to watching this guy play the game. And to your point, we've all watched a lot of Major League Soccer. I don't know if in this league I've ever seen anyone in the entirety of this league do some of the things that he have done this year, where you're just like, this dude is on another
and it's
level.
Because like there's worldies every year, and you players score worldies, and there's everyone can produce, like, a blind squirrel can find a nut, right? But this guy consistently every game is doing things that are just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, we're joking about breaking defenders' ankles and people falling down trying to tackle them, and it's all true. It's just a different level. He is exceptional.
Elizabeth, I know you went on the MLS Spaces show last week and were asked to make this argument. Why is Carlos Heel the league MVP? So tell us, what was your argument? Why is Carlos Heel the league MVP?
Well, like you guys were saying, the eye test, I think just in general, if you watch the games, you can see what he can do. But you take a look at the Revs, 57 goals, and we'll talk a little bit of stats just to put them on the table before making a deeper argument. But 19 total combined goals and assists for this group. That's a third of the Revs' production so far this season has come through Carlos Heel, and that's official numbers, not even saying that he hasn't played a larger role down the field in some of those scoring statistics. But you look broader beyond that, and he's played a goal and a quarter of the chance creations. I think the Revs have had like 204 shots on goal at this point, and he's around the 50 mark for being involved in those. But for me, I think what takes the cake, in addition to his special moments, is that he elevates every single player around him on the field when he's out there. And if you can have a team that's really good without Carlos Heel, like you look at their production when he was out for a month of the season, but then you have a great team, a playoff team with Carlos Heel. I think for me, that's kind of what seals the deal in the sense of he's able to make everyone around him better. This team's good without him, but they are a phenomenal team with him. And for me, the icing on the cake that really just sealed the MVP argument was the late stoppage time winner against the Chicago Fire when, he's still kind of coming back from his injury. He comes in off the bench. There was a lot of rotation in that game, obviously. Comes in at the half, and he finds that game winner. He is able to make those magic moments when they count. And I think that's what we've seen consistently from him, not even just now, but year over year. You saw he was the newcomer of the year in 2019. Last year, he helped lead this team to the Eastern Conference Final. And this year, he's just been such a staple. So I don't really even think there's another option, like Cathal was saying. And Matt Doyle on Spaces felt the same way, which I was surprised when he didn't come back at me with any sort of, reiteration for, well, what about this? When he just said, no, for me, it's Carlos Heel. So I think there's just no other option at this point. He's just proved himself.
Well, people love to have this conversation about what does valuable mean. Like, well, most valuable player means best player in the league. It just means best player in the league.
It does.
Stop reading too much into what valuable. Well, how valuable is he to his team? Because this is the argument, and we knew that this was going to happen. The argument that I've seen a few people try to use against Carlos Heel is, well, when Carlos missed 6 games, the Revs went 4-1-1, so they don't really need him. That's how good Carlos Heel is. Yes, the Revs went 4-1-1 without Carlos Heel. They were a really good team without Carlos Heel, but they are that much better with Carlos Heel.
It's just again, it just gets back to just watch the player.
Yeah.
Just watch the player and tell me he's not the best player in the league. Simple. You can't. You cannot.
It's also just on top of those moments where you see him. He always does them at the best times when the team needs them. He steps up. He's able to, capitalize in those moments when you need it most, just like in clinching the playoff berth at Chicago when they finished 3-2 with his 91st minute game winner.
Right, and this is an award that's voted on. It's not like, you put a bunch of stuff into an algorithm and it spits out the best player. Like, this is voted on.
It is.
The actual human beings doing the voting, it's very easy to just take all the factors that everybody just said and be like, here's your winner.
I will say, there's obviously been a little noise for a guy like Daniel Shalhoub, who's having a great season, but I think most of that noise is coming from Kansas City.
Yep.
It does seem like most of the national media has been like, yes, Daniel Shalhoub, Hani Mukhtar, these guys are having unbelievable seasons. But Carlos Heel.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that he missed a month and he, we talked about the midseason candidates and he was obviously at the top of the list, but he missed a month and he's still in the conversation and at the top of the list. I think that just speaks volumes, the fact that he wasn't even in it for an entire month and he's still at the top of the list.
Matt Turner. Is Matt Turner your MLS goalkeeper of the year? And if so, why?
Again, just watch the player. He makes saves that defy logic at times. He's been nothing but excellent for a couple of seasons now. He's transferred that form to the national team. He's the best keeper in the country. Best keeper in the region.
And so I do think all of that matters, even if it's not supposed to. Like, if you're supposed to vote on MLS goalkeeper of the year for the 2021 MLS regular season games, in theory, that's what you're supposed to be voting on.
Sure.
And the numbers this year, and I think Matt Turner would probably agree as well, the numbers this year actually they're not nearly as gaudy as they were last year. So I know with goalkeepers, and I know analytics are whatever, but I do really like, in terms of goalkeeper analytics, that expected goals against goals against number, because it gives you a sense, essentially, of how many goals a goalkeeper prevented over the course of a season. And I think the numbers this year for Matt Turner, 2019, a couple years ago, his number was something around 5 goals saved, which was near the top of the league. Last year, in a shortened season, it was between 8 and 9.
Absurd.
Saved like 9 goals in a shortened season. Absolutely off the charts last year, but didn't win MLS Goalkeeper of the Year because Andre Blake had such a great Philadelphia Union team in front of him that they had so many shutouts that it was just like, look, this guy's keeping it. And Andre Blake's a great goalkeeper.
Sure.
But Matt Turner was the best goalkeeper in MLS last year.
Yep.
The numbers this year actually haven't been as gaudy. His goals saved something like 4 or 5 again. So not as gaudy as last year, but I think he friggin' deserved to win that award last year and didn't. I think that's going to factor in, and I think his U.S. national team performances are going to factor in. They're not supposed to, but they're gonna.
But it has to, because it's all part of the body of work. And when you have a player like Nani stepping up to take a penalty, who's done everything on the global scale, and is terrified of Matt Turner in the net, they should just walk onto the field and give him the award right then. That's who he is in the league now. That's who he is. That's his stature. That's what he's become. It's again. Yeah, am I looking at it through Revs covered glasses? Maybe. But to me, he's the best keeper in the league.
I think also on top of that, when you're talking about the national team experience, at this point, I know it's based on just the MLS games, but at the same time, he's played less MLS games than a lot of keepers at this point because he's been on the international call-ups and he's been playing with them. So you have to also kind of you don't need to, I know it's just based on the MLS regular season games, but when you look at his national team performance, he's played so many more games. So I can understand when he comes back and he's, say he's thrown to net on Saturday. I can understand if he's tired. He just played 3 games with the national team. Meanwhile, his entire team had a 16-day break. So I know he has conceded more lately than we're used to, but I also think you have to take into consideration he's played a lot of games at this point this year, especially going all the way to win the Gold Cup.
Yeah, Matt Turner is the best goalkeeper in Major League Soccer. He's never won an MLS Goalkeeper of the Year award. He should win Goalkeeper of the Year this year.
Yep.
That's the conversation. I did have a couple more questions here about best 11 selections and national team selections and which players on the Revs should potentially be involved in best 11 and national team conversations. But we've already covered a ton of ground, so I think we'll save those conversations.
That for another show.
They're going to be those conversations.
If we ever do one,
are still going to be relevant when we come back. So we'll save those conversations for another time.
There's a long break between the
we're gonna have a lot
regular
of time.
season, the playoffs.
So yeah,
we did the best XI then.
To that point, this Saturday night, the Revs are back in action. They kick off another stretch of 4 games in 12 days as they'll host Chicago Fire FC at Gillette Stadium. And as we talk about, you want to go out and be the best team in MLS history and win a supporter shield. Chicago Fire at home on Saturday night. This is a team that is 1-11-1 away from home this season. You got to go out and beat the Chicago Fire on Saturday night if you want to be that team.
So hyped.
Different kind of must-win game, but it's if you want to achieve what we talked about this year, then this is the game you have to take care of.
Yep.
And you have to get after it early and put this team away.
Yep. And then because the Revs do play midweek the next 2 weeks, so we probably won't be back for a couple of weeks, but then come November, we should
There's going to be so much, Jeff.
We should have a decent amount of time to have some podcasts between the regular season and playoffs.
Just Jeff all over the place in November.
Because
we should call it Jeff Ember.
Jeff, I'd like that.
Again.
It just rolls. That rolls right off the tongue.
No Jeff Burr.
No Jeff Burr. Yeah. No them Jeff. Yeah, there's so many options.
Yeah, send us your suggestions to at Jeff Lemieux.
Yeah. At Jeff _Lemieux because I'm pretentious.
Yes, you are. Yes.
Look, come November, we'll have some opportunities to get in here and talk about the New England Revolution and the MLS Cup playoffs and all of that because there's a huge gap between decision day and the beginning of the postseason. So we'll look forward to that. Hopefully when we're back on the show, maybe by the next time we're back on the show with probably only 1 game left in the regular season, maybe we're talking about some pretty special things here.
Yes.
But for now, thanks for listening to the Far Post Podcast presented by Esports Gaming.
Bye.